Good afternoon and welcome to Coping with COVID. Updates on the pandemic and information to help you thrive and survive COVID-19. I'm Tre Tailor, and Coping with COVID is brought to you in part by SCDHEC and the City of Columbia Office of Business Opportunities. One of the most frequent questions that we get here on Coping with COVID has to do with folks with pre-existing conditions and why they're at such high risk for COVID. Well, we've got a physician here that's going to talk about at least one of those risk factors. Dr. Daniel Lackland is with MUSC, and he's going to talk to us about hypertension or high blood pressure. Dr. Lackland, thank you so much for joining with us.
Great. It's wonderful to be here.
Thank you. We're going to come right back with Dr. Lackland, but first, here are your COVID community updates. DHEC and Prisma are continuing their ongoing COVID testing throughout the state of South Carolina. Visit scdhec.gov and prismahealth.org for locations, times, and dates for COVID testing throughout the state of South Carolina. Now, today and tomorrow, Benedict College Stadium in Columbia is doing COVID testing. Actually, it's over now. It's till 2 o'clock from 10 a.m. until 2 o'clock tomorrow. In Horry County, the Inland Square Mall is doing free COVID testing until 5 o'clock today. And until 4 o'clock this afternoon, you can get free COVID testing at Dillon Middle School. Now, tomorrow, James Brown Elementary School in Walhalla is doing free COVID testing. And Monday from 9 until 3 in Florence, you can stop by Iola Jones Park. All of these COVID testings are free. You'll get your results within about 3 or 4 days. Spanish-speaking individuals are available, and they're giving away free supplies, including masks. Now, if you live in Richland or Clarendon County, call 911 Monday through Friday from 9 until 5, and you can get some COVID testing information. Also, the DHEC Care Line is available Monday through Saturday from 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. That number is 855-472-3432. If you'd like to organize a COVID testing event at your event or in your community, call ACC/testing at dhec.sc.gov. You can look on the screen and all of that information is scrolling, or you can call 803-673-6110. DHEC has actually over 120 mobile testing sites throughout the state of South Carolina through July 2nd. So please visit scdhec.gov for complete listings and times. Now, yesterday on Coping with COVID, we talked with City Councilman Ed McDowell, Columbia, South Carolina City Councilman Ed McDowell, and he told us about the mandatory face covering policy that the City of Columbia is considering. If you would like to listen in on that meeting next Tuesday, and if you would like to give your opinion, again, the information is scrolling on the bottom. Call 855-925-2801. The code to get into the meeting is 9929. And if you want to just listen, hit 1. If you want to leave a message, hit 2. And if you want to speak for 3 minutes, hit 3. It's going on next Tuesday in Columbia, South Carolina. That's your COVID community update. I'm Tre Tailor. Coping with COVID is brought to you in part by SCDHEC and the City of Columbia Office of Business Opportunities. Hey, don't forget the Coping with COVID is going to move to the Tailor Made Productions page. So please follow and like that page so you can not only watch Coping with COVID with Tre Tailor, but you can also get all of your COVID updates. Dr. Daniel Lackland is with us. He is a professor of epidemiology at MUSC. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Lackland. I appreciate it so much. So, like I said in the open, one of the frequent questions we get is why folks with pre-existing conditions are at high risk for COVID. Can you explain that first, please?
It's a wonderful question, Tre. First off, just to your credit, that we are people with a comorbid condition, associated conditions, seem to have a worse outcome if they are infected with COVID. So that's spot on. Really? The actual mechanisms have been proposed from a number of things where maybe there's an actual interaction, some inflammation, that type of thing that you get with the approach. The actual mechanism is unclear, but what we do know is that there is an increased risk. And with something like hypertension that affects nearly half of the adult population with definitions, this is even more. So certainly, it certainly is something, particularly for the people in South Carolina, where we have an increased risk of hypertension. We have hypertension at earlier ages. We have more uncontrolled hypertension and
Wow.
hypertension-related conditions that we're all familiar with stroke being at the top, heart failure, and then also kidney disease, all associated with hypertension. And now we've got this virus that's coming in and even increasing our risk even more. So the first part, just as you said, let's be aware of this. Let's recognize what our risks are.
That is fascinating that you said that over half of the population has high blood pressure, hypertension, and you said it's particularly bad in South Carolina. Is that because we like fried chicken and collard greens?
Well, that's the other piece. We don't really know, but what we should recognize is we're not absolutely sure, and that's the bad news. And so why are we doing it? And certainly lifestyle and behavior, salt intake, diet is there, but we also have a situation where we're just, it seems to be at greater risk. Our blood pressures are higher at earlier ages, and I imagine many of us, including myself, my parents were hypertensive. Guess what? I'm hypertensive too. That's the bad news. The good news, though, is that we have so many different types of treatments. We can use lifestyle. We can cut down the salt intake. We can lose some weight. We can get some exercise. We eat more fruits and vegetables, all things that we know we should be doing.
Yeah.
And then very importantly, we should know what our blood pressure is. And that's where you're so brilliant on your comment. No, we should know what our blood pressure is. And if we don't know, we can, it doesn't hurt. We don't have to give blood or anything else. Go get our blood pressure measured. Know what our blood pressure is. If we're high, then let's get it under, let's go see our physician and let's get a treatment to lower it. And if we are on blood pressure medication, we should take it. The good news is that while most of us are hypertensive, the good news is that we know that we can control it in everybody, we know that we can lower the blood pressure.
Right. Well, a couple of things I want to ask about that. First of all, I know that what's high has changed, fluctuated in the last couple of years. So what is high blood pressure?
Okay, it's a wonderful question. And right now, it used to be, we would say a systolic, but the top number would be 140 and the bottom number is 90. Okay. But what we've recognized is that there are blood pressure. We used to call this other value, it's called pre-hypertension. We used to laugh about it a little bit, like, what does that mean, pre-hypertension? I guess we're all pre-dead in one sense too, right? I mean, we're pre-something, we all are. So, but what we did know was that some of these lower values, like the 130 that we used to call pre-hypertension, now we recognize that that's a greater risk. And so if your blood pressure is 130, the top number, or greater, then you should be considered to be hypertensive, and you should be thinking about the different types of therapies that treatments that you would want to do, including lifestyle. And you want to now have a blood pressure less than 130.
Okay, less than 130. Johanna Bridgette has joined us, Dr. Lackland. She says she hasn't taken advantage of her extra quarantine time to move more. She says she needs to do better, something as simple as walking. So is that one of those things we really need to do?
Absolutely. I think we all know that too. And I think, Joanna, I think you're spot on. And it's so when we're sitting in a room, I'm the same way. And I've kind of noticed, I've even actually put on a few pounds, and I'm thinking, okay. But we can do some things. So certainly, and walking is something that's there. And we know that we can, respect distances. We can also get some walking. Walking is one of the things that we can very well do. And in one sense, it also helps our minds too. There's something about being shut in and not being able to get out, and then turn around and maybe getting out, get some walking, and give an opportunity to maybe think, and then sometimes, maybe meditate or whatever, and kind of commune with the Lord, or maybe.
Yes. We're talking to Dr. Daniel Lackland. He is a professor of epidemiology at MUSC. We're talking about COVID and hypertension. So, Dr. Lackland, so many things that you said in there that I want to talk about. First of all, so what do we need to do if we have high blood pressure?
Okay.
We talked, Johanna says walking is one thing, and you mentioned diet.
Yes, absolutely. So the first thing, know what my blood pressure is.
Right. Know what your
And,
blood
and, and
pressure
the
is.
second piece of, what does it mean? How high is it?
And is it the same for everybody, Dr. Lackland? Is it the same for everybody?
The blood pressure values are, but the risks are a little bit different. So as we get older, just because the way that we're made, our blood pressures go up, our arteries get stiffer, and that's just the way it is. And so our blood pressure is going to go up. But what we need to know is what my blood pressure is, what category it is. And so I tell you, my blood pressure, let's just pretend and say it's a 135. Well, that makes me at kind of just a little bit hypertensive, but I need to be treated. And so I get that in there. I'm probably going to get a prescription of some medication, and I need to take that medication as it's being prescribed. And what I want to do is to get my blood pressure lower. So it's in one sense, I'm monitoring my blood pressure to see, are these treatments working? The other piece, very strongly, is the lifestyle that we've brought in. Certainly getting some exercise is good. Watching our diet, we all take in too much salt, and it's just the way it is. And salt's important. I like salt. We all like salt.
You said salt's important?
Salt is important. It's to our diet, but it's also important. What's happening. We're taking too much.
Right. I wanted to stop you for a minute, Dr. Lackland, because we talked to a dietitian earlier in the week from DHEC, and she told us sugar has no place. Well, everybody just almost lost their minds. So the fact that you're saying, now, let me tell you how I translate salt is important, that I can have some French fries.
Okay. Well, you know what, you can't have
every day. I can't have them every day.
You can't have them every day, and you can't have them for every meal. And that's not your only source of vegetables.
Right.
Or the French fries.
A vegetable.
But when we order the French fries, I'm the same way. I'm exactly the same way. If you do order French fries, on occasion, watching what's happening in here, just don't ask for extra salt. And also, and I think a very important, and I'm putting this the same way. We used to have a series of slides, and we talk about, and particularly about salt intake.
Right.
We all need some salt, and it is an essential piece of our life. We need to have it. But what's happening is most of us in South Carolina, in particular, we're getting 4, 5, 6, 10 times the amount of salt that we do. And in some cases, it's not because we're adding salt to our food, aware of it, taking the salt shaker, but also processed foods. And we think about, and there's a number of restaurants that what we do is we show a meal and we say, here's a meal. How much salt do you think is in this meal? And this is the problem. We don't really know. And so we want to know our blood pressure. We also want to know how much salt are we taking in.
Right.
And if we think about a minute and we don't, and we're not aware of how much salt is there, then what we're doing is we're thinking, well, I don't know why my blood pressure is high. And it might be high because I'm taking in too much salt. And so we want to be aware of my blood pressure, my salt. And I think most of us know that when we have too much salt, we can't turn our rings and we feel
we get bloated.
Fluid. And so, but we should be aware of labels and look at labels and see what the salt is, and recognizing that really I don't want to take in much more salt beyond 2,500 milligrams a day. And in some cases, I get shocked myself. I will have a meal and I'll realize, well, I'm shooting for 2,500 milligrams. Oh my, that one meal just had 8,000 milligrams in it. So I've taken 2 or 3 days worth of salt in that one meal. So we want to be aware.
Yeah. Dr. Lackland, Johanna wants to know, is there a difference between celery salt, garlic salt, table salt, kosher salt?
Sea salt.
Sea salt. If it's got salt at the end, is it just bad?
I tell you, it's a wonderful, wonderful question. We all think about it. And basically, salt is salt. And the part of the salt that increases our blood pressure is the sodium that's in the mouse.
Okay.
And for the most part, salt has an amount of sodium in it. So what you want to do is to kind of recognize that and recognize the amount of salt that you're using. Like I said, food that had no salt in it at all, maybe experiment with some other spices,
Seasonings,
herbs,
yeah.
and seasons, and that kind of stuff, and see if that might work for you. And if you do use salt, use it in moderation, but also know how much salt you're using, and and how much salt is in a particular meal, and thinking about it, and that can be done.
Yeah. And Dr. Lackland, you made such a great point about the hidden salts in a lot of fast food, a lot of processed food,
Sure.
and are we flipping those boxes over to see how much sodium is in, in all of that?
Absolutely. And even if you go now, the labels are pretty good. Even if you're
Yes.
if you're at fast foods or you're in a restaurant, most of those will tell you how much salt is in that particular meal, whether it be a hamburger, French fries, or whatever it's going to be. They'll say this is how much salt is in there, and you're just kind of adding it up in your in your head what it is, and recognize where you would want to be.
I want to thank everyone for joining us for Coping with COVID. I'm Tre Tailor. Dr. Daniel Lackland with MUSC has joined us. Bernice Breland says, Tre, I love how you're bringing the pertinent issues to us. Thank you so much, Bernice. I appreciate it. Christy Savage says, again, thanks for bringing the important information. She wants to know, Dr. Lackland, are there holistic ways to treat hypertension that really work?
There, in one sense that there are. Certainly there's diet. We've already spoken about it. We can have too much salt, but there's a number of fruits and vegetables that will help. And it's a wonderful question, and I'd like to go there. Also, we have found that kind of being quiet, thinking about meditating. There have been some wonderful studies that even doing things like very comfortably sitting down, being quiet, reading the Bible, reading scriptures.
Wow.
Can help you relax in you once and kind of lowering your blood pressure. That said, it's a wonderful thing. But if you have high blood pressure, for the most part, we've seen some stuff where you can lose weight, and losing weight will certainly help lower blood pressure, and something very, very important. But it's not a substitute for some of the medications. And that's a little bit how we're kind of made up. So the medications are important. I do think there are a number of holistic things that can be done and should be done that have been shown to be there, but you kind of want to do this in conjunction with the medication. And if you wanted to look at that other kind of benefit that I think about, if I go in and my blood pressure, you're not able to control my blood pressure with one medication, and many of us require 2 and sometimes even 3 and 4 medications to lower our blood pressure that we can get. Lifestyle's been shown to maybe kind of substitute for one of those extra medications. And so there's a benefit of always joining in the lifestyle holistic approaches in order to manage your blood pressure.
Okay, great. Bernice wants to know, if you are asymptomatic, do you go? Oh, she's asking a COVID question. I'm gonna hold your question for a minute, Bernice, because we're still talking about what is hypertension. So I'm just gonna hold it for a minute. Johanna wants to know, what is her body missing if she craves salty food? She says she's not pregnant.
Okay, I don't think she's missing anything. We all crave it. I think it's a natural thing that we want. But I think that craving. So all of us have some desire. One part of it is just the basic taste, and it's the way that we've been pretty much raised. My mother always added salt to the food, and in the South, in particular, for a long time, salt was used as a preservative. That's how you preserve before refrigeration. So we've all acquired taste. It's the way it is. It's the way food is prepared. It's this other, and that's fine. But what we can do is satisfy that craving as well as it's with a less amount of the salt. And I think that's the part. Tre, if I could, the other question about the asymptomatic, while it is a COVID question, but it's also asymptomatic is an important part for blood pressure.
Okay.
Unfortunately, you're not able to look at me and say, hey, he looks like he might be hypertensive. It looks like his blood pressure. You've got to have that blood pressure measurement. And for a long time, people used to say, that hypertension was called the silent
The
killer.
silent killer, yeah.
And because you didn't know unless you had your blood pressure measured. And I think that's a critical piece. And it also fits in with measuring your blood pressure and then also after you've taken your therapy and after you've become treatment, you want to take it again to see if the therapy's working. And I think it's a great question. And it also works again, obviously, for the COVID, that you can be very asymptomatic and be infected with the disease. And so in one sense, the two are going hand in hand, and you could very well be hypertensive and have the COVID-19 infection and not know it. And again, it brings in for both of those measurement of blood pressure and being tested for COVID-19.
Well, Bernice's question specifically was, if you're asymptomatic, do you get over the virus in 2 to 3 weeks as you would if you were symptomatic? Is it the same, length?
Yeah. And Bernice, it's a wonderful question. It's been some thought that you might get over it in a shorter period of time. But for the most part, the correct answer is we don't really know now, but we're studying it such that but there has been some thought that if you are asymptomatic, that it's a shorter duration. But at this moment, we don't really have the details of that.
Yeah. Thank you, Bernice, for your question. Thank you, everyone, for watching Coping with COVID. Dr. Daniel Lackland joins us. He's a professor of epidemiology at MUSC, and we're talking about COVID and hypertension, high blood pressure. Dr. Lackland, what about low blood pressure? Is that as big a risk?
It's a great question, and there's a very few people that have an extremely low blood pressure that they need to do. Take into some considerations, and there's some ways, typically non-pharmacological, that you're able to kind of raise the blood pressure. But very importantly, that is an extremely small number of individuals. The risks are a bit unclear, and it's usually in older individuals and where the blood pressures have gotten kind of low. So it's certainly something you know when you have your blood pressure monitored, but it's not something that you want to say, I'm not going to take my medications and I'm not going to watch my lifestyle because I'm fearful that my blood pressure is going to get too low.
Right.
I think for the vast majority of us, our concern needs to be on that other end, on the higher end. But it is possible to get there. And some people become nervous. You typically can become dizzy with a very, very low blood pressure, particularly when you stand up. Mm-hmm. And there are ways to treat that and to take care of that without quitting your medication. And I think that's the key. Don't quit your therapy.
Right. So what happens if someone with hypertension, high blood pressure gets COVID? And the question is also, why are they so much at risk?
Okay. Again, brilliant questions. The first thing is that they are at greater risk. The exact mechanism, we're not real sure. Some people, there have been some suggestions that the type of therapy that you use for hypertension increases the risk with the virus and what.
Wow, your meds. You're talking about your medications.
Yes.
Wow.
The medications might be doing something and kind of maybe helping out the virus.
Oh, wow.
Certain type of medications, but we really don't know because we know that the risk is there. So there's a lot of study going on right now to see what are the mechanisms. Why do people have these particular risks? On the other hand, on the good side of that, though, is that the people that are infected with COVID, that have controlled blood pressures, that are taking yes, they have high blood pressure, but they're taking their medications, they're doing the lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Those people tend not to have a greater risk that's there. So that's kind of the good side.
Oh, that is good. Yeah.
That if you're controlling the risk for hypertension with the mechanisms that we've all described, all of them mm-hmm. right there together, lowering that blood pressure allows us to deal better with the if we are infected with the COVID-19. Mm-hmm. Really important, control that blood pressure as a concern too for COVID-19.
Right. I definitely want to make that point because you said that some of the medications may cause you to have it. So we don't want people to stop taking their
Right,
medication.
absolutely. Please emphasize that over again.
Yes.
I don't want to be misled. Absolutely.
Yeah. Take your medicine.
But there's been some, yeah, absolutely, and take the medicines that are having that because the benefit from lowering the blood pressure far outweighs any other risk. At least right now, we may find something down the road, but right now, I'm very confident with what I'm saying.
Now, Dr. Lackland, I've also heard that another cause for the risk is because when your body is already dealing with something, as in hypertension, diabetes, asthma, whatever, you're already weakened in a weakened state, so to speak. So anything else coming, as in COVID right now, will have a adverse effect on you because your body is already in a, so to speak, depleted state.
Trey, I think you're spot on, and I think that's kind of what the damages that high blood pressure does to you, and we've spoken about it. So it increases your risk of stroke, it increases your risk of heart disease, and it increases your risk of kidney disease. Well, those are often the places that the COVID virus wants to go infect, in addition to the lungs. So they're working on the same tissues and they're working on the same parts of the body. And so what you're saying is right there, and they can kind of work in one sense together, I guess, and kind of bring it in there, even bringing in more importance of lowering that blood pressure.
Right, right. Dr. Daniel Lackland is with us. He is a professor of epidemiology at MUSC. We're going to come right back with him and talk more about the effects of COVID on those with high blood pressure after we talk a couple of minutes about our sponsors. We'll be right back, Dr. Lackland. The Coping with COVID is brought to you in part by SCDHEC, Healthy Communities, Healthy Lives. Please check out scdhec.gov for an updated list of testing sites and important information on how to protect yourself, your family, and your friends from the coronavirus. SCDHEC, Healthy People, Healthy Communities. You can see the updated list of testing sites scrolling on the bottom of the screen, as I mentioned in the top of the show. Also, the City of Columbia Office of Business Opportunities is a proud sponsor of Coping with COVID. Please check them out. They help meet the needs of small, minority, and women-owned businesses in the City of Columbia. That's the City of Columbia Office of Business Opportunities. Hey, don't forget to like the Tailor Made Productions page on Facebook, because the show is going to be moving to the Tailor Made Productions page. On that page, you can not only see Coping with COVID with Tre Tailor, but you can also get all of your COVID updates. Dr. Daniel Lackland, Doctor of Epidemiology with MUSC, joins us on Coping with COVID, and we've been talking about COVID and high blood pressure. So, Dr. Lackland, should folks with high blood pressure be doing something different to cope with COVID, so to speak, or try to protect themselves from the virus?
Well, certainly being aware. And being aware, I'm like most of us. We know what our risk is. We've seen them over and over of increased risk with COVID. So one, age is certainly right there. And we know that comorbid conditions, hypertension, diabetes, etc., we know that we have a greater risk. And we know that if we come down with that, with COVID-19, that we have a greater risk. So we want to do everything that we can to avoid as much as we possibly can. Certainly, the distancing is the best way. Washing our hands, doing it. It's probably a good thing anyway, right? We should be
Yes.
washing our hands, and maybe we get being too close. So I think those are the two that are right there. Covering the face, I think if we're getting into a part, and again, the covering the face mostly protects others from us, but it's also an indication that we're aware of our greater risk, and that maybe puts a little sign on others that we're concerned about sharing the infection. But doing those things that we know slows down on preventing the COVID. But we also shouldn't run and hide and stick ourselves in a room and say, well, I can't, like was said, I can't get exercise. I better just eat any kind of junky thing I can possibly find, and I had no sense in taking my medication because I'm too afraid of the COVID-19.
Right. Yeah.
And so we don't want to do that either. And I
Yeah.
think we want to be able to maintain the things that we know are healthy, that we know that help with elevated blood pressure, and be respectful, I guess, of the COVID-19, but let's don't be fearful of it.
Right. Now, you had mentioned earlier that some of the medications, some of the high blood pressure medication seems to be, I don't know how you put it. You can get it helps you or makes you more susceptible to getting COVID. Now, is there something that the meds, the COVID does to the meds?
Okay, it's a good question, and it doesn't make you more susceptible to the COVID-19. What it does, what it seems to go to your other question, why do people with high blood pressure tend to have poorer outcomes with COVID-19?
Right.
And so one of the things that just kind of seemed to it is the type of treatment that people are getting. That seemed to be associated with how the infection reacted in certain things, but we really don't know. And so, because most of us are treated with specific treatments.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just comes to happen that most of us are treated with that. So we're taking it more often. And so it just happens. So it's not real clear, but I think the clear message is the one that you were giving. Don't stop your medication for blood pressure because you're fearful of what would happen if you got infected. And I think there's nothing that would suggest that that's a good thing to do.
Yeah. Let's talk about clinical trials and studies. Are there some, what are your suggestions as far as those folks with high blood pressure participating in those?
I think it's important too that and with the clinical trial, and we can do the results of a clinical trial are the results of people that participated. And so if you have segments of your population that either are distrustful of studies or for whatever reason don't participate in a clinical trial, then you can't say that those trial results are applicable to them. Mm-hmm. And so we certainly have whether it be ethnicities, gender, whatever, it's critical for a clinical trial to have everybody to participate so that you can say this trial found this agent worked or this vaccine works or whatever.
Right.
And you want to be able to say, okay, I'm confident that vaccine is now going to work for me because they had enough of people like me, including people with hypertension, that this vaccine works in those folks as well. So one of the fears that's happening with the COVID-19, whether it be a trial for COVID-19 or any clinical trial, is that for the results to be valuable, you've got to have that participation, and you don't want people fearful of participating in a clinical trial that's going on now because they're fearful of the infection. And that's an issue for us to all think about. You certainly don't want to expose yourself unnecessarily, but participation in the clinical trials is very, very important for all of us to participate in.
And you're right. There is some fear in several communities, particularly in the African American communities, for clinical trials because of our history with clinical trials. So how do you go about recognizing, finding out, researching the most reputable, safest clinical trials?
Trey, it's a great question, and I'm going to put it a little bit back on the investigators themselves and the researchers. I think because of history and because of distrust, justifiable distrust, I think it goes back to the researchers are now going to have to go that extra mile and show this is a study and trial with integrity, and the results will be done for good, and it's going to be done for all, and I think that is happening.
Yeah.
And so it's important to remember the past, but it's also you could say, if you were wondering about a particular trial, I think that's a reasonable question to ask the investigators. You can say, if you want
Okay.
me to participate in this trial, can you tell me how you're going to safeguard me and make sure that I'm participating, and what are the results going to be, and how are they going to benefit me, uh,
Right.
and folks like me.
Right. So you're saying just ask.
I think you just ask, and if they
Yeah.
can't answer your question, I think you've got a really good answer.
Right. Then the answer was no.
Yeah, right. And
Yeah.
I think right now, good, reputable clinical trials should they should be proactive and tell you those answers. But if they don't, Trey, I think it's a wonderful, wonderful, very, very fair question, an
Yeah.
important question too.
Now, do you know of any upcoming clinical trials? Because you make a good point. It's almost kind of like the census. We've got to participate in the census to know that we are being represented. So
Great.
we've got to
Great.
participate in clinical trials to know that whatever we are, African American, female, whether tall, short, heavy,
Sure.
skinny, have diabetes, have, hypertension, whatever, your group, your demographic is fairly represented so that you know that particular, whatever the trial is can work for you. Yeah.
Trey, it's brilliant, and I think very, very, very. I mean, that's exactly there. There's a number of sources. I mean, you can do internet sources, searches, and things like that. But also, your physician or your healthcare provider is an excellent source. There are trials that are going on all over the place. So certainly the COVID-19 trials are going on either for vaccines or treatments, et cetera, that you want to kind of qualify for. But the other concerns is that there's trials going on for hypertension. There's trials going on for stroke, and certainly for cancer. And one of the fears is that because of the infection, people don't want to participate out of fear of getting the infection that's there. In the meantime, that's delaying some very, very important results that could benefit all of us. And so I think it's reasonable to go to your healthcare provider and say, I'm interested in I'm interested in I want to see progress made. I want to see new agents coming in. I'm willing to participate. Are there some trials that I might be eligible for and that I could help out? Because when we do it, we're helping our community. We're helping people like us because we're participating in something that gives great value.
So do you know of any trials that are currently looking for participants, Dr. Lackland?
Well, I would say, as a person that does some of these type of things, all of the trials are looking for. So you would have a list, but it's very important to know that I qualify. Okay. So if it's a trial on hypertension or a trial on diabetes, I need to have one of those conditions. And typically your healthcare provider, which is one of the major sources of people being enrolled in trials, particularly if it's a pharmaceutical type of thing, that they'll go to your healthcare providers. And so your healthcare provider should be aware. And that would be a reasonable question. Just pick it up and say, look, I'm interested in clinical trials. I'm interested in moving research forward. Are there any trials that you see that I might be involved in?
Right. Johanna wants to know, in addition to safeguarding her, do they take into consideration her ethnic difference? Example, in her opinion, her BMI test was not made for her background or her ethnicity. Why do you say that, Johanna? I want to know why she thinks that. Yeah, I thought that's an interesting point. She said, in her opinion, her BMI test was not made for her background and ethnicity. Why do you think so, Johanna? Can you type that in the comments while she's doing that? We can continue our conversation. Dr. Daniel Lackland has joined us on Coping with COVID. He is a professor of epidemiology at MUSC. And we've been talking about COVID and high blood pressure because we keep hearing that pre-existing conditions are one of the risk factors for COVID. So we've been talking about why that is and what folks with hypertension can do out here in this COVID world, because we're all
in it.
Yeah, we're all in it. Anything else you can share with us, Dr. Lackland, concerning COVID in relation to hypertension, high blood pressure?
Again, knowing our blood pressure, and clearly with the COVID, to the point about the BMI, and I understand that there's some of, but most of this, and I guess it's one of the nice things that crosses culture, it crosses variety of things. A number of the risk factors, in particular, with something like blood pressure, high blood pressure, regardless of your race, your ethnicity, or even for your gender. High blood pressure, none of us live well with high blood pressure. And lowering blood pressure is a benefit for all of us. Now, the risk of having high blood pressure vary, as we well know, across demographics, but the benefit is all equal. So in this point, we kind of really are all in this together. Let's lower our blood pressure, let's lower our risk, and we do it all together, and that's going to show that exceptional benefit for all of us together.
Before we get back to Johanna's question, because she did say a little bit more about it, I do want to know, so why is high blood pressure more, and because you said, yes, we all have it, black, white, red, yellow,
Sure.
pink, man, women, but you did say it is particularly less beneficial for people of color. Why is that, Dr. Lackland? Can you say?
We don't know all the pieces, but it seems like the mechanisms are pretty much the same. African Americans, for example, do intake a little more salt, and at an earlier age, and some of those risk factors are there. And there's a component of it that most of us are hypertensive, and the other piece to it, why the risk is so much greater. It seems like when we have high blood pressure at an early age, you tend to not think. You don't think if I said, oh, here's some teenagers, here's adolescents, here's people in their early 20s. You don't think of those folks as being hypertensive. Right. It's just not there. So yet they are. And they have high blood pressure, so they have high blood pressure, and you typically, I hate to say ignore it, but you tend to not get that kind of awareness, and so you're living with an elevated blood pressure, that's doing damage to your system for 10, 15 years. And then when you start treating it, in one sense, some of the damage, not all of it, but some of the damage is already done. So it's so important with blood pressure that you want to know, even children's blood pressure. You want to know, is my child hypertensive? Is my child there? And it's actually easy to treat a high blood pressure in a younger person. It's just easier. Their system's pretty good. And sometimes it's really just a form, it's hey, you really need to watch that salt, or you really need to get that exercise, get the blood pressure down, and then you avert it from getting higher later in life.
Now, do you think you should do that anyway, or do you do it if you notice your child maybe is a little overweight?
Most of the pediatricians say at this point, we find it benefit, almost like a mother knows what her child weighs. Mother knows lots of information. Fathers too, but the mothers know that. I think it's important to know, what is that blood pressure. There's value in knowing my child's blood pressure is average,
whatever,
whatever it's going to be. And if it is a little bit high, you want to bring it down. So there's benefit in lowering a child's blood pressure to that normal range too. And there's good information about that as well.
Okay. So Johanna says that her physician says she's healthy, but her BMI test says that she's overweight. She said she didn't have any abdomen weight. That's why she was wondering if the tests take into consideration ethnicity.
Joy, it really is a wonderful question that she has. If all of her other risks are okay, if her lipids are okay, and her blood sugar is okay, and her blood pressure is okay, and she feels good, and I think that's an important piece, and she's comfortable with how she is, fine. But if any of those other things go and combine with that with the BMI. If the blood sugar goes up some or the blood pressure goes up, then you do want to watch, and you do want to think that maybe I can lose weight in addition to the pharmacology to lower these other risk factors. But if that's all there, everything else is great. It looks in there. Well, there you go.
She said that her doctor said that all her numbers were well within range.
Okay.
So, Dr. Lackland, that's so interesting. So could she still be healthy and be overweight?
Sure. Yes.
Okay.
As apparently she is. And congratulations.
Right.
But it's certainly great things and wishing all the best. But we shouldn't say, but for others, they would be overweight, and that would be associated with an elevated blood pressure, and that would be associated with the diabetes and other things. And so we don't want to say that because one person is like this, we all are like this, and so weight doesn't matter. But it could be in this part.
In this instance, yeah. And it's different. It's different for everyone.
It's different for brilliant. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's very important. Brilliant. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're all different in that.
We're all different. Yeah. And like you said, my doctor may say I am healthy or I'm overweight and I am unhealthy. But Johanna, you're healthy. Like Dr. Lackland said, all of your other numbers are good. You're just a little overweight. So,
And she, very important to monitor this all the time. And you want to make sure that it's kind of consistent because it can change, and you want to make sure that you're there. So you say, okay, anyway, you want to monitor all your blood pressure, blood sugar, all of your lipids and everything. Yes.
Yeah. She says, thank you for your honesty. Thank you, Johanna, so much for your honesty, for, revealing all your personal medical business right here on Coping with COVID. Dr. Daniel Lackland, thank you so much for joining us. You have been just such a joy and such a wealth of information. If people want more information, about you, about more information about COVID and high blood pressure, and about those clinical trials that you're working on, how can they do that?
Okay, they certainly, if they just they can write to us through MUSC, readily available at that point, but also through DHEC too. So I think if there's some specific questions, and I think I work with them very closely. So if they just call, they said, you'd like to send Lackland a question or something like that, I would be very happy to see with any of those mechanisms.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Daniel Lackland, a professor of epidemiology at MUSC. Again, thank you so much for joining us on Coping with COVID. Please post and share this important information out so we can get it out to the masses. Please be sure to like and follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And don't forget that Coping with COVID will move to the Tailor Made Productions page. So please like and follow that page also. You can keep up with the show and also get all of your COVID updates. Now, if you have a COVID-related message that you'd like to share to help someone cope with COVID, please inbox me at the Tailor Made Production page. If you have a product or service that you would like to share, please email me at thetailormadeproductions@gmail.com. And let's talk about how you can be part of the great sponsors like SCDHEC and the City of Columbia Office of Business Opportunities to also be a sponsor on Coping with COVID. Now, tomorrow, how COVID is affecting events like weddings. We'll talk to couples and events planners. And we're also going to head on out to the Juneteenth Festival. And Monday, one of the other risk factors, Dr. Lackland, diabetes. We're going to talk with Dr. Gerald Wilson about COVID and diabetes, all that and more coming up on Coping with COVID. Coming up, I'm going to share the Jesus Calling, but first we want to thank Dr. Daniel Lackland again. Thank you again so much for joining us, Dr. Daniel Lackland. Have a great weekend, and thanks for joining us.
Very good. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Sam.
Yes, sir. As always, I leave with a reading from Jesus Calling. Today is June 19th, and it says in part, "My guidance for each of my children is unique. That's why listening to me is so vital for your well-being. Let me prepare you for the day that awaits you and point you in the right direction. I am with you continually. So don't be intimidated by fear. Though it stalks you, it cannot harm you. as long as you cling to my hand. Jesus says, keeps your eye on me, enjoying peace in my presence. That's your Jesus Calling for today. You can go to JesusCalling.com for your own copy of Jesus Calling. And another one of the journals I read from is Conversations with God from Dr. Cheryl Williams with Agape Christian Counseling. You can go to agapects.com or call Dr. Cheryl Williams at 803-779-2777. Hey, don't forget about the Juneteenth Festival going on tomorrow from 10 a.m. until 1 p.m. until 8 p.m. on North Main Street. It's in Columbia on North Main at 4622 North Main Street from 1 until 8. Free admission. And it's going to be a great time as we celebrate Juneteenth. Until tomorrow, I hope to see you on Coping with COVID. I'm Tre Tailor. Take care. God bless. And please be safe and wear your mask out there.